Okay, and we're live. So, welcome everyone to a very special Winter of the Wallflower chat. My name is Dana.
And I'm Kelly, and we are the host of the Seasonally Booked Up Book Club. All season long, we have been reading and discussing the Wallflower trope, reading books from the 1980s all the way to 2020 with an incredible and insightful group of readers who we call our Wallflowers. And we are so excited to have some of the authors that we read this season here with us today to chat. So if everyone in the comments can help us give a warm welcome to... We have Cat Sebastian, author of The Ruin of a Rake. We have Elizabeth Boyle, author of His Mistress by Morning. And we have Lenora Bell, author of Love is a Rogue. So thank you for joining us. Readers, I know that we were expecting Stacey Reed tonight. She unfortunately cannot be with us. If you are watching this and have not read her Wicked Marquess, do so. It is fantastic. You will not regret it.
So the season has been really, really amazing. So thank you to all the authors for not only joining us today, but for giving us all of these wonderful stories to escape into right now. Kelly and I have been compiling all of our burning questions for all of you. And then we have some questions from the Wallflowers. So we'll be saving some time at the end of the hour for questions for those tuning in the comments.
Yes. All right. So let's dive in, talk about all things Wallflower. Something we did in the group when we started is we asked every member to give us their definition of what a Wallflower is. So I would love to hear from all of you how you personally define a Wallflower and what you think kind of brings readers and writers back to this archetype time and time again. So let's start with Elizabeth for this one.
Okay, well, when you guys sent me this question, I was thinking about it, and it really is I think it's someone who's a square peg in a round hole world, and they just don't fit the way they're supposed to, or society thinks they should. And I think the reason it's a popular trope is there's elements of that in all of us where we don't fit, or where we've stood on the sidelines and said, I wish I could, I just can't. And just that line that just so hard to cross. And I think that is, to me, what a Wallflower is.
I love that.
Did you want more?
No, that was perfect.
Short and sweet. There we go.
All right, Kat, I know that you have said you could give a TED Talk on Wallflowers, so I'd love to hear your definition.
I'm going to try to rein it in a little bit, okay?
No.
I think that what Elizabeth said about, we all relate to a Wallflower, okay? There's research showing that even people who are really gregarious and really socially competent think they're socially awkward, okay? And so we all understand the feeling of being in a situation, whether it is the London season or whether it's just life, where you feel like you aren't competent to be able to deal with that, or you're not able to project the version of yourself that you want to project. Okay. And maybe it's because you are socially awkward. Maybe it's because you are just a giant nerd and you don't want, and you just don't you think that what everyone else is doing is really irrelevant to you and your life and your interests, right? And maybe it's because you just have too much going on in your life to be able to put on a nice outfit and care about all of that. And I think every single person has been in one of those situations, right? And so you have the opportunity for a self-insert, right? Which is not all characters have to have that potential, right? But with a Wallflower, it's just so easy for the reader to slip into that. So, yeah.
I love that. Lenora, do you have anything to add?
Well, first, Dana and Kelly, thank you for inviting us here. It's just so amazing. I mean, your Wallflowers on Instagram have been posting all these beautiful pictures of our books, and it's just been it has felt just like a celebration this whole month leading up to it. So I just want to thank all the Wallflowers and thank you guys for organizing it. And it's been really fun.
Fun.
They made us feel like not Wallflowers. I think, what Elizabeth and Kat said about, just feeling on the outside, but there's also sort of an element, I feel like sometimes a wallflower could have been pushed to the outside or relegated to the outside by others. And that's sort of a rich internal wound. We talk about, as authors, we talk about wounds and how our character arc is going to heal those wounds. And a wallflower could feel like they're on the outside, or they could have been pushed to the outside. So there's a lot of rich emotional, response to that we can develop as authors. And also, I feel like a lot of wallflowers have this rich interior life. Like they just have so much going on in their mind. And it's so much more than what gowns are we wearing or who's dancing with whom or whatever. They've got this whole rich interior life. And I think that's really fun to explore as well, is, they have other goals.
I love that. I love all of these definitions. And I think that's something we really saw as readers over the season, that we almost started with thinking that Wallflowers was really a narrow term, when in fact it's more of an umbrella, and it's all of these different things kind of fall and fit under it. All right, so my next question for the group is, do you remember the first Wallflower that you read? And if not, do you have a favorite Wallflower? So we're going to start with Kat for this one.
So this is where like the umbrella definition of wallflower comes in, because I think that Georgette Harry wrote quite a few wallflowers, okay, but I think that if we can count Venetia as a wallflower, then that's probably the first that I read. And because she's like, she's off like living in the middle of nowhere, like dealing with her scholar brother, and has like just sort of let all of, she's like, she's 24 or something, so she's ancient, right? So she's like let all of these social opportunities pass her by, and all of the women in her neighborhood are like, oh my god, it's an emergency, right? And but she just isn't interested in putting herself out there. So I think if we can include Venetia, she's probably the first.
Yes. We'll allow it. All right, Lenora, Elizabeth, what about you two?
I think I'm going to go back even further to Charlotte Lucas in Pride and Prejudice. She was the quintessential wallflower, right? She was, I think that, she's written as being sort of plain of face or whatever, and whatever that meant at that time period. And she didn't have a lot of prospects. She wasn't wealthy. And she was sort of relegated to the sidelines, and she had to make some pretty damn hard choices in her life. And I've heard, but maybe you guys have read it, I've heard that there's a new book, or maybe a few years ago, that gave Charlotte Lucas her own book. And I think it was called like the Clergyman's Wife or something like that. But I'm interested to read that book, because Charlotte Lucas was always a character that I wanted to know more about. I wanted to know, more about that choice she had to make. And she was a wallflower for sure.
Love that.
Mine is my favorite, and my first would be from Ellen Montgomery's The Blue Castle. It's one of my most favorite books. Ellen Montgomery wrote, of course, Anne of Green Gables and the Emily books, but The Blue Castle is one of her lesser known books. And the character of Valancy Jane is just, she's so wonderful. She is just, the family has regulated her to the sidelines. She's an afterthought in everything. She's a spinster. And then she finds out she's going to die. And it's that moment of decision. And I think that's part of what is so much fun about a wallflower, is that moment of decision that they face. Am I going to continue my life this way, or am I going to step over that line? And when she does, it's just glorious to see her just blossom. And the poignancy of that book, I just love it. And that would be my choice always. She's just such a fun character.
Love that.
So our next question is for Lenora in particular, but you're all also welcome to answer. So Lenora, in your acknowledgments for Love is a Rogue, you shared that this book is kind of your ode to like bookish people and loving books. So do you feel like being bookish is a kind of inherent trait of the Wallflower? And why do you think like Wallflowers would relate to just a bookish main character?
Well, Lady Beatrice Bentley, she was a character in One Fine Duke, which was the book before that. And she came to me fully formed. She was one of those characters that she just popped up and she started talking about etymology. She started talking about the meaning of words and sort of defining everything. And she was hiding behind a potted plant in the ballroom reading a book. And she's a trope, but she also just sprang forth in my mind so fully formed that I was like, you know what? She's a wallflower, but she's also the quintessential bookworm. She always has a book in her hand. In her book that she gets, she's being fitted for the season and she's reading a book. And her mother makes a rule that she can never read a book in public. And she's like, I can't do that. I cannot swear to that. No. And I think that, all of us here grew up reading. We're readers, right? All of the Wallflowers, we're all readers. And that was not only an escape, but it was a way of extending your life, like extending your life experience. I grew up in a very small, tiny rural community in Alaska. And I was just never without a book in my hand. And I had a closet I would crawl into and sort of have a little fort and just always be reading inside of it. Or maybe I would climb up an apple tree and read in the tree. I thought I was Anna Green. I really wanted to be Anna Green Davis, speaking of Ellen Montgomery. I really wanted to. She's another heroine with a fascination with words. I love Anne. And I've never read the one you mentioned.
The Blue Castle?
No, I've never read that. Well, anyway, I'll have to read it. But so I feel like bookish heroine and Wallflower they go hand in hand. It's a match made in heaven.
We all could relate to Beatrice. So Cat, we saw a real change in Wallflowers after we read Lisa Kleypas. It seemed to kind of define the modern Wallflower that we know today. So have you personally seen the trope evolve and change in your years as a reader and a writer? And again, open to everyone after Cat.
So I think that there's probably two recent milestones there. And one is the Lisa Kleypas books, and the other is Tessa Dare, who probably 2/3 of her heroines are Wallflowers, but they tend to be the giant nerd variety of Wallflower, where they are scientists and artists and and they just cannot have it with the rest of they don't want any part of a world that doesn't want them the way they are, or they just can't figure out how to fit themselves in, right? So with Lisa Kleypas, you have the Wallflowers who are having they're having sex adventures with rakes, right? So we have the pairing of I think that entire Wallflower series, I think all the heroes are rakes. I can't off the top of my head. There's Devil in Winter, right, which is part of that. Okay, but I think the others are too. And so I think that we have this two great taste that tastes great together situation going on with the Wallflower and the rake. And Lisa Kleypas didn't invent it, but she honed it down into this is something that we all now can recognize as a distinct trope and a distinct identity, And then I think a few years later you have Tessa Dare doing the science Wallflowers and animal rescue Wallflowers and cosplay Wallflowers, okay? And so more of the square peg round hole type of Wallflower, whereas 50 years ago you have more of the meek, mild, beleaguered, the eldest daughter, okay, who has to put all of her needs aside in order to make sure that everybody else has a clean dress and nobody falls off their horse and the vicar isn't served bad chops of meat or whatever, all of that. And I think I feel like that's the big change that's happened during the time that I've been reading and paying attention to that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, so Dana and I both work in publishing, and something that we felt too about that series is it's almost like the branding of the Wallflower, because it's in the series title. And then suddenly after that, we do start to see Wallflower in Lenora, your series, and Stacey Reed's series, Tessa Dare's series. Like, it's kind of like the Dukes, where suddenly it's like this sells and we see it popping up everywhere.
Yeah, so we've read, the Winter of the Wallflower, we started with 80s and 90s leading up, and Lisa Kleypas felt like the turning point, but it was also like the first time that, it was really heavily marketed as Wallflowers, and that was exciting because it was very hard to try and figure out which 80s and 90s books had actual Wallflowers.
Very
vague. Were just quiet ladies.
That's like really interesting because like Wallflower is one of those titles, one of those descriptors that we're allowed to put in a book title. Okay, there's a lot that you just don't really put in a book title. Okay, whether like there's conventional wisdom like that you don't put like widow in a book title, right? And that you don't and am I right? Like, is that outdated? It's probably 10-year-old information, right?
No, that's not, because when I did Confessions of a Little Black Gown, a Little Black Dress or Black Gown, they did not want to put a black gown on my cover because it was too funereal.
Yeah.
And we fought for it. And that book did really well because it was just such a beautiful cover with that gorgeous black dress. Mm-hmm. But again, it's that marketing aspect. And, it's kind of typical. The minute one publisher sees something doing successful, like Wallflower or Duke in the title, or, let's do a riff off of a TV show, and that works, then suddenly everybody is using that same thing, because it's just that bit of comparison that helps readers identify what that book is and find the ones they love.
Mm-hmm. And I think that certain titles, like if it has Wallflower in it, I think that actually does a better job than like Rake or Earl. You know what I mean? Like in telling you what is inside the book, right? You know that you're probably getting like a kind of character who is like either awkward or bookish or low-key in some other way that is going to be relatable in a way that like maybe a spy wouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then in the course of the story, she's going to find her own agency and blossom and grow, which is something I think we all want to do in our lives, no matter where you are, at what point you are. You want to take that next step and beyond, and no matter what you feel awkward in. So,
right, and I think that element of finding your agency, both internal and external. So like Kat was saying, with Tessa Dare's books, especially the Castles Ever After series, these Wallflowers have inherited property. And that is so unusual for the time period. But it's like taking the Wallflower trope and then rewarding the Wallflowers. Mm-hmm. Like, you have now just inherited property. You are an independent woman. What are you going to do with this independence? You can be as sciencey or as nerdy as you want, because you don't have to marry. You have inherited property. So that was, to me, I love that series.
She's so good.
I love Wettiscott Ties the Knot. I think it's probably one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah,
one of my all-time favorite romances ever written. And not only did she avoid marriage, but she created the fictitious suitor so that she wouldn't have. It's just it's such a brilliant plot. It's like the Wallflower who created her own escape and then inherited property, which made it possible in the real world.
Yes. Exactly. If anyone is watching this and has not read that book, stop what you're doing, or after this interview, go read that book, because it's phenomenal.
Book club member Sophie in the comments admitted to not having read any Tessa Dare, and so I think we need to change that and fix that, Sophie.
It's happening. It's happening. But I'm glad that you brought up kind of that unique element, Lenora, because I think each of you does something very unique with the Wallflower trope in your books. So what are the challenges of kind of approaching a trope that is like well-known, well-worn, and how do you do something innovative with it?
Well, I think it's more the story comes to you, and it excites you because you haven't seen it maybe before, or it's what you want to read. And, this is a story I would really want to read. And so that excitement of the idea, like with His Mistress, My Morning, that book, it just hit me in a flash. I have to write this story. The whole thing just dumped into my head like somebody just poured a bucket of ice water over me. And I literally just sat down and started writing that book because the idea was so exciting to me, and it was so much fun to kind of put that little bit of magic into a historical romance, and at the same time take somebody who was a wallflower and turn her into a courtesan, which I thought that is just kind of, all I could see was her waking up the next morning going, "What the hell? What are you doing with a naked man?" And he's like, "Come on, baby," and she's like, "Whoa!" Yes. Whoa! and when I start laughing and get excited, then I think, okay, somebody else is going to like this too. But yeah.
Oh yeah. When we were looking for titles and we came across that premise, we're like, wait, what? Like it's like you have to read it to find out what happened.
Yeah, that book was a risk because, even Avon was like, magic and historical romance. And I did actually get a lot of emails from people that are very, historical romance. Here's the box. Do not step out. I mean, you guys know this because you guys have all stepped outside of the box too. And you get these letters that are like, you have crossed a line. And it's only been in the last few years where people have turned around and go, no, I really kind of like that. And it's gained more momentum and popularity at the time. And that's probably why the series didn't get finished, was because there was enough pushback that they said go a different direction.
So Elizabeth, I want to let you know that I just found that book in an op shop. Well, they call thrift stores in New Zealand, they call them op shops, opportunity shops. Oh. And they don't sell a lot of romance in bookstores in New Zealand. It's really quite sad, actually. Yeah. There's not even a romance section. There's in like, they don't have Barnes and Noble, they have something called Whitcoulls. And there's no romance section. And I think maybe there's a few people watching today that are in New Zealand. I know there's a few of my friends watching, and we're always lamenting this. So when we go out and we go to thrift stores and we find romance, we kind of text each other like, "Look what I found!" Like, it's kind of this big deal if you find a romance book at a thrift store. And I found that one, and I just started it, so I've got it on my shelf.
Yes. Well, I mean, our readers in the comments are all about having the third book. So, that people love them, if that means anything.
I shouldn't tell you guys, but I've got like a third of that book written and then it got pulled. So it's sitting underneath my downstairs cabinet, just sitting there. Poor Griffin. Oh. Poor Griffin. The story is just sitting there waiting for someone to write it. So.
Well, and like Milton, we want to know more about everyone.
Quincy Milton, I love them.
They're so great.
I know.
Our little bonkers babies.
I know they deserve a book all on their own.
They do. Well, yeah. If anything ever changes, we are here for it.
Get writing. Yeah.
Right. Right. Lenora, Cat, do you have anything to add about innovating such a familiar trope before we move on?
Sure. I mean, okay, so obviously making the Wallflower a man is like an innovation. Okay. I really I love the rake Wallflower trope so much that I needed to write it, but like I'm there in the middle of like a series that's and so I was just like, whatever, like this is just the way it is, but also like when you come up with like the motivation for why a character is or wants to be invisible, right? Mm-hmm. That's like Lenora was saying, like that's huge. That's like a huge opportunity, right? Like we're always looking for like what it is. At least me, when I'm writing my first draft, I have no idea what's happening, and I'm looking for what it is that makes this character tick, right? Mm-hmm. So like the choice to make yourself socially invisible is a big one, and like he's decided that he's he's chronically ill, like, and he thinks like that's he has like a lot of baggage about that. Like he thinks it's like gross and disgusting. Okay. And also he has a sister who he thinks is like basically like incapable of like living her life. You know what I mean? Like, and so he wants to balance out like her eccentricity with his being like super normal. And so he calibrates every single choice he makes to be correct and boring, and nobody will notice him at all, you know? And so like that, and because that seemed like that would be a rational choice that a person could make in that situation. I also I want more like men wallflowers. Like I want to see what other people do with that. I want it in straight romance. Like I want people of all genders like to have the opportunity to be a wallflower, you know.
Here for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want that too, Cat. Write it. Yeah. I'm having fun with this series because the title of the series is Wallflowers versus Rogues. And I had just thrown out Wallflowers, Rogues, and my editor was like, well, how come they're not like versus? How come they're not in conflict? Because my editor is always telling me, look, Lenora, your characters are too nice. You have no conflict. That's really pretty much, that's the edit I get. That's the edit I always get.
Oh,
Which editor do you have?
but we love it.
Who's your editor?
Carrie Farron. Bless her heart. She has her work cut out with me because I don't like conflict. So, but anyway,
She's a good editor, though.
She's a wonderful editor. I just always get that edit. But the point is that she was trying to tell me something by putting Wallflowers versus Rogues in the title of the series, because that kind of implies that they are at contretemps. They are, you know, in conflict. So I have to write the book then. And I have been having fun with kind of making unconventional occupations for my heroines. I'm not really that interested in writing like ballroom scenes. I want to get out of the ballroom. So the one I'm writing right now, she's a vintner in England, and it's based on an actual historical estate, the Paynes Hill estate, that was creating sparkling white wine in the 1700s in England. So she's a vintner. And I think maybe sometimes as authors, we selfishly just want, not really selfishly, but just sort of, we just want to research, like, how did they make wine back then? And is it plausible that the English could make a sparkling wine to rival French champagne, and, you know, that type of thing. And then I'm also researching my next heroine, who's a musician, and she's finishing her father's symphonic compositions under his name. And then I have another heroine who is attending law school as her invalid twin brother. So, I mean, it's just fun. It's fun to explore the wallflower trope because they can have these other occupations other than just dancing in a ballroom.
Yes.
I know we loved seeing all the little glimpses at the future wallflowers in the first book, Lenora. So we're very, very excited to see them all come to fruition in future books. So our next question is for Cat in particular. So as men, your heroes are able to spend so much time together alone. So how do you think that impacts the pacing of your Wallflower story in particular?
So usually, like 9 times out of 10, I have to make sure I have to come up with the reasons for them not to jump into bed at the first opportunity. And I'm pretty sure in Rune of a Rig, they did jump into bed at the first opportunity, which really does change the pacing. I think that's one of those oh God, I wrote a sex scene at a full-on sex scene at 25%, and it's fine. We're just going to go with it. That's usually what happens, and so now they're I have to come. And also, I also am very bad at conflict, like what Lenora said. I feel when I do a plot, I have a plot with actual conflict in my book, I have to tell everybody because I'm so excited that I actually did it. There's an arc, but it's so at that point, if they're in bed at 25% or 30%, then there's that's a lot of book where you have to come up with other things for them to do, right? So basically that means that we have people like unpacking their psychological burdens and like really getting to know one another. Okay, which is also something I really like, you know, and obviously that's what happens you front load that if you're going to have them fall into bed at 70%, right? You front load them like really getting to know one another. But instead they're getting to know one another in bed, you know, like that's what happens basically. I think that's like probably 7 of my books is like me putting them into bed and then being like, okay, now where does that leave us?
Right. I mean, we enjoyed that. That was great for us. So, I think so. We like divide our books by a certain amount of chapters we read every day. And I think most books, it's like on Wednesday, we're getting to the first sex scene. And Kat, we had a sex scene from you every day of the week. So, like seriously, every single one. It's a delight.
I think that's my highest heat book. Like I think
it is.
It is. Like none of my books are like super low heat, but that one is like there was no reason for those 2 characters. Like, there was no reason where they wouldn't bone down like early and often.
Constantly.
I just swear it would have been totally out of character for one of them to be like, no thanks, you know. So that was just what they did.
No, yeah. The second Courtney like hooked his foot around Julian's chair at the opera, like it was on.
We were done.
Yeah.
But like ready.
And then I was writing a character who lived so much in her mind and not in her body. So I just felt like it could not have been in character for her to have sex. And not even she kissed him in her mind in the first 25 pages.
That was delightful. That was such a cute
mind.
I love this.
You know, so I mean, it was just like I had to be you had to be true to the characters, right?
Yeah. Well, and that was so great, Lenora, because she's sitting there and she is like, you know, kissing can't be as great as words, though. Like words are going to be so much better than kissing. And you just know as the reader, like, oh, girl, you're going to get proven so wrong. Like, I can't wait to see it.
But you do deliver, Lenora, on deaf sex. So everyone was happy in the book club. So it was great. And then Elizabeth, we have a mistress and in our alternate universe. So like, it's great.
Sorry, I got the dog barking at the UPS guy.
No.
What did you say? Did you ask me a question?
Oh, I was saying that like we have a mistress in our alternate universe, so it's fantastic and brought the steam for us.
Yeah, that was I think just such a fun book to write. It was because every day it was like, okay, so how do I just make this so much worse for her? I am just going to push your comfort level right up against the cliff.
That's great.
It was fun. And then I think they get the cool part about a Wallflower is they get to that point where it's like, you know what? If I don't do this now, I may never do this in my entire life, which is not true. But I'm going to do this now while I've got the chance. And that I just think sometimes that act of, you know, of having sex or taking that adventure. Oh, here comes Mr. Burks a lot. And yeah, it's like, who are you talking to? It is that moment of change. It is that transformation for them. And as much as they like doubt, you know, there's so many things, especially when you're writing the Regency, so many things that can go wrong. You know, pregnancy and everything else. That making that step is just really fraught with, okay, dog barking, shush. So just fraught with problems. And I think that's part of the fun of it is they get to the point where they are willing to take those risks.
Yes.
Just to have that life experience.
I love that as a motivation. Like that always has struck me as so true when a character is like, if I don't take this opportunity to like figure this out for myself right now, who knows when it's going to come by again. Like that always strikes me as like, that would be a reason like for somebody put all of those risks aside and just like kind of go with it.
Yeah. When opportunity knocks, I think it's a lesson for anyone that hesitates. You know, when opportunity knocks, there probably isn't a downside. Well, there probably is, but that's the hesitant to me waffling. But that's the joy of reading the books, is that they take that chance. And then they just go have so much fun. Yeah, that was a crazy wild book. Can I get away with this? Can I get away with this? Yeah, why not? Let's, wow, that's not your aunt, that's your mother. She's your procurator. Wow. Whoa. I mean, when you turn somebody's world absolutely upside down and opposite, what would happen? And it was just a riot. And then of course the next book, where the heroine's invisible, that was really tricky to write. So yeah, literally
Excited to read that one.
Yeah. You guys will have to try that one. Yeah, try having sex with the invisible woman.
A challenge.
Yeah. Well, you can feel somebody, so it was a lot of fun.
Did you see, when you were writing these books, Elizabeth, did you see them as kind of movies? Did you see them in a cinematic way?
It wasn't so much, you mean just like, oh my gosh.
Just because it's almost like the magical elements is almost like superhero type of a thing. Like I could just really see them as movies. Oh, well,
from your lips to God's ears, please. Or Netflix, or
yes, Netflix. For sure.
No, but they were, it was actually a movie that inspired the first book. It was a Disney film I was watching with the kids, and it was a kid who found a coin that granted him a wish. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, that's a cute premise. And then it was like, what if it was a ring? And and then the ideas just started tumbling down. And so it is sometimes that other source that is just that flash of inspiration. And then every author picks up an idea and takes it in a direction that, we could all three of us sit down and have the same exact Wallflower premise, and they would end up so different and so delightful in so many different ways. And that's the joy of having something like a Wallflower.
Do you think that the Wallflower group would be into just like making a plot and then I could just write it?
We do have an upcoming game called Title Smash that
we will
get to enjoy this
title.
I'm looking for plots.
Oh, we got you. Well, so one last question before we can move us into the lightning round. But because we were just kind of talking about these like steamier scenes, I think, and the agency of Wallflowers, I think we see so much of that agency happen in the bedroom. Because in romance novels, right, these sex scenes are so important. They are character development, they are plot development. And I think for Wallflowers, they're very much about like seizing their own power. So I would love to hear about how you plot that character growth across those scenes of intimacy, whether they're happening at the forefront of the book, or Lenora, like you, they're happening at the latter half of the book, and kind of how maybe that changes your Wallflower journey.
That's a hard one.
Sorry.
No, again, sex is such a vulnerable moment. But it's two people that don't know each other often as well as our characters usually have just met, or maybe they've known each other, but they haven't known each other in that capacity. And especially with the Regency, that type of intimacy would have been unknown and unheard of, especially for a young lady. So it really is like a vast new territory and a vulnerability that is unthinkable now. But even now, that is just a very vulnerable situation. Yeah. I look at myself. I've been married for almost 30 years. And the idea of going out and meeting someone else and getting intimate with someone else, I don't even want to think it. Now, I like a book boyfriend. I have a pandemic boyfriend that I just, go through his Instagram feed and go, wow, wonderful. And he does dog rescue. So he's like just perfect pandemic boyfriend. But actually intimate with somebody else, oh my gosh, that just terrifies me. And so I think in a Wallflower and in all of us, sometimes just looking at that other going, oh my God, no. But with a Wallflower, you get to explore it and it's safe and it's delightful.
Yep.
So there.
And I think, Kat, what was interesting with Julian is that sometimes with the Wallflower, it is that kind of first time exploration. But for Julian, it wasn't. It was something that he had sex before, but it just had never been the way that it was with Courtney.
He didn't have any experience with emotional intimacy, at all. At all. I don't think he has any actual friends other than his sister.
Poor baby.
Yeah, he's trying his best. He's not trying his best. Actually. That's the problem. But when you guys sent me that question, right? I was like, holy, are we cursing? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Fuck yeah.
Okay. Julian actually ties Courtney up, in one of there's that's, and the reason he does it isn't because he personally wants to be tying people up. It's because he realizes that's what Courtney wants. Okay. And he realizes that somebody else doesn't want to have control, and for him who has jealously guarded his control for his whole life, being able to see that as something that somebody would willingly want to give up is and struggle to ask for, that is a big deal for him.
Yeah. And there's a great switch then of him in turn giving that control up to Courtney in one of the final scenes.
Yeah. Yep.
And Lenora, we have those naughty books that really help the characters explore what they want and where they want to be. I was waiting for a moment for our heroine to take one of her own and sneak off, but I love that it's kind of brought up in this moment of them together exploring what she's reading to him from what he was reading.
Right, yeah. One of those scenes where the hero's reading a bawdy book and the heroine walks in on him, There's it was fun to write a hero who was a rogue and a ladies' man, but very principled, very, very sweet, a mama's boy. He loves his mom. Ford was this big, gruff carpenter, but he was so respectful of Beatrice because he knew, and that was sort of the internal conflict I had to develop, that they were from two different worlds. He's a carpenter, she's a duke's sister, a duke's daughter and sister. So it's one of those, it was difficult, but it was fun to explore the man being the male partner being the one to put the brakes on and be like, no, we can't do it. No, but she was like, ooh, I'm exploring new words. And ooh, you just handed me a hammer and told me to knock down a wall, and I'm knocking down this wall. And it's just this it's a symbol, right? It's a heavy hammer symbol of her knocking down the barriers in her mind, that she could own her power, she could own her body, she could experience pleasure, and it's all with this man who she trusts because he is respectful.
Yes, we love Ford.
So it's time for our lightning round. So this game is Title Smash. So we've basically mashed up all of the titles from the books that we've read from you guys, and we've made some new books. And our hope is that you can shout out some words of what you think this story looks like, though it doesn't exist.
Yes. So we're going to assign each of you a title, and you can tell us the plot. We borrowed this from Fated Mates did this in their anniversary special.
So for you, Lenora, we have My Wicked Mistress by Morning. Any ideas of what this story could look like?
So it's by morning. Okay, so it maybe is sort of an Elizabeth thing, maybe maybe it's a reverse. Maybe this is a courtesan in hiding. Oh, it's kind of like my first book I wrote. She was raised by courtesans, but she's pretending to be a wallflower. She's pretending to be a society girl. She's snuck into a ball. She's out to get revenge on someone. It's like kind of like revenge porn. someone's gonna be filming. They can't be filming them, but someone's waiting.
Sketchy, quickly.
The newspaper tabloids. Okay, here it is. She's a courtesan. She dresses up like a wallflower. She goes to a ball. She seduces this rake. When they get woken up in the morning, there's a newspaper reporter out there making a portrait. It's going to the scandal sheets.
Oh my God.
Boom.
Wow.
I mean,
One click.
ready.
Bam.
That was great.
He's ruined. He is ruined.
Yes. Your editor would love that. There's so much conflict.
Right.
She's going to take notes.
Right? That was fantastic.
So our next one is for Elizabeth. So here's your title, Love is a Rake.
Love is a rake. Okay, it's set in a garden.
We love a punny title.
Yeah, there we go. It's set in a garden. He's a gardener. And let me see. Oh my goodness, love is a rake. I'm going blank. Isn't that terrible? Love is a rake. Okay, so he's absolutely disavowed love. He is a viscount in disguise, disguised as a gardener because he's tired of women chasing him. But he's disavowed love because he had a really bad relationship and got called off at the altar. So he's gone to the country. He's posing as an expensive gardener. And the eldest daughter of the house finds him very attractive. She's been spending way too much time nursing her, let's see, grandfather, who's promised her a large dowry, but he keeps changing his mind and sending the money to a wicked cousin. Is this just crazy? Let me see. And yet the gardener is encouraging her to, let's see, expand her nursing business. No,
I like where this is going.
this is just going anywhere but readable.
I think a good start.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah, a maze. Yes, there's a maze. Definitely a maze.
Love it.
Thank you to whoever put that in the comments.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. All right. So, Kat, yours is His Mistress's Wicked Marquess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is polyamorous, right? Like obviously. Okay. So I think it would have to be, right? Because we have his, like he's the Marquess. What's the Marquess doing here? Okay. The answer is they're all falling in love. Okay. So we have childhood best friends, his, whoever he is, right? And the Marquess, right? And okay, and so now we have, so he has like a long-standing like friends with benefits situation with like his mistress. Okay. They're like chill best friends, whatever. Maybe they're neighbors. Okay. And then the Marquess comes back he's been fighting Napoleon. Okay. And
Everyone does.
Right. He's fighting, and he's all fucked up from fighting Napoleon. Okay. There's a lot
As
of
one is.
right. And so he has like a lot of attractive scars now, and mental and physical. He's a disaster. He comes back, and he's staying with the guy. Okay. He's staying with his childhood best friend. Okay. But he's having nightmares in the middle of the night, okay? Because nightmares are a great opportunity. This is terrible because people actually have nightmares and like PTSD and whatever. And I'm just like, opportunity for bed sharing. But they are, okay? And so he has a nightmare. And so he goes into his friend's bed in the middle of the night because like that's maybe, I don't know why. Okay. But that's just when he was a kid. When he do. Right. And so, because when he was a kid, he would do that because of his other nightmares about his horrible father. Okay. So his father, who he defied by joining the army and going off to fight Napoleon, okay, which is why he's not at home in his ancestral whatever, okay. So he then gets into bed with his pal and his pal's mistress, okay, and the guy and the mistress decide to just like play it cool, like it's a very normal thing. What do you do? Like they're not gonna like kick this guy out, so they just act like this is just, like they're good hosts, and and so the next night it happens again, and it happens a couple times, and then like the mistress is like, do you feel like maybe he's trying to send us a message? And the guy is like, no. He's no. He's as straight as an arrow. And then like, okay, so he's kind of like, groping us, I don't think it's a normal nightmare. and so they all test the waters, and then they live happily ever after.
Yay!
Cat, I would like this book yesterday, please. Sounds like all of my favorite things.
I love it.
Well, thank you for playing that with us. All right, we would love to open it up to readers in the chat. If they have any questions, Dana can bring them up on the screen. So send them through for us now.
Oh, now they get quiet.
All right. Where's Sophie? Sophie, I know you have some questions in you.
That's it.
If
We've
they're
answered everything.
being shy, then all right, we'll give them a minute. Let's do a fuck, marry, kill while they pull their questions together. Dana, you want to pull up the Wallflower one? Okay, so this is a special umbrella branch Wallflower fuck, marry, kill that Dana's going to pull up, and the three of you can answer for us. So fuck, marry, kill: the spinster, the blue stocking, or the scandal.
I'll fuck the spinster.
I like that.
I mean, she's got to be hot. She's got to have a lot of hot fantasies because she's been holding it all inside. And
Right.
yeah.
And you get like the sex education trope, which is always wonderful.
Yeah. And also maybe she wears spectacles. And I could take them off.
Well, so who are them we marrying, Lenora?
Oh, I have to do all that? Okay.
I mean, you could stop there if you want.
I'm gonna stop there.
That's enough. All right, Cat Elizabeth, do you want to take it a little further?
So I would marry the blue stocking. I feel like there's like a lot of potential for conversation here. Okay, and that I feel like that would work out well. Okay. I think the scandal, it's going to depend on what the scandal is about, okay? Probably like 90% of scandals are probably gross people being gross, right? Like, right? Okay, so like there's probably like horrible, like people doing bad things to their employees and whatever. Okay, so he's dead. And so like Lenora, I will fuck the spinster, yes.
Yeah, I like those answers.
Now I'm going to fuck the scandal. I'm just gonna fuck the scandal because they know what they're doing. Here we go. I'm gonna marry the blue stocking because she'll know how to handle the money or have the money. And the spinster, I'm really sorry.
We'll just send her off to be with Lenora.
There we go. Lenora, I'll just put her.
We'll let her live.
International postage. There is a package arrived.
Oh.
We have some questions from the audience. Yeah, so here's one from Ellie. What have been people's quarantine escape books?
I love this question.
Wow. I just read Her Last Flight by Patrice Williams, which I thought was just a fun book, really good. What was I was just looking at a list of books today. What is the other one I read that was just like, oh my gosh, hand it to everybody. Of course, now I can't remember. But that was Her Last Flight. It was just fun. It was really cool. Kind of a reimagined Amelia Earhart. And it was really kind of fun.
Well, I was on a deadline until just like a few weeks ago. So when you're on as all of these authors know, when you're on a deadline, you just really can't focus on reading. Well, I can't anyway, focus on reading many other books because you're just really trying to focus and finish your book. So I was reading, what I do is I have this book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic. And I would just recommend it to everybody. It's a book about the creative process. It's about writer's block. It's about blossoming creatively. It's not just about writers. And what I do is I kind of use it like a spiritual guide. I just open it at random and I say, well, what does Liz Gilbert have to say to me today to help me meet my deadline? And it is phenomenal. She reaches directly out of that book and grabs me and says things to me. And she said to me I was finishing my book and she said to me, we don't have time for perfect. And I was like, you're right. And then she said, done is better than perfect. And I was like, yes, it's such good advice because so many of us were striving for something that we'll never achieve. And so if any of the Wallflowers are writing a book, look, you don't have time for perfect. Just finish it.
Yeah.
Good advice.
I feel like I've been drafting a book for the past year. Like it hasn't all been the same book, thank God, but like it's, I manage to build in cushions in between books, but because I have my kids home, I have my husband home, it's like, I never know where there's just nowhere to do anything. Okay. So I'm basically squeezing writing into these like horrendous little increments. So I don't really read historical romance while I'm drafting. I used to be able to, but now the voice like gets into my head and like it interferes with my ability to have my voice. Okay. So, but I can read contemporary romance and I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I'm puttering and I have noise canceling headphones, which means I can pretend that no one's talking to me, which is the dream. Okay. And so I have listened to like a gazillion audiobooks in the last year. I now belong to like the 2 credit a month club on Audible, which is like the best money I've ever spent. But anyway, so like in the last week, I have listened to all of Roan Parrish's books that are available on audiobook. Okay. I just have it going constantly in my head. They are so good. They're so emotional. A lot of them were like really, really high heat, but they aren't driven by pure horniness. Okay. Which like, to me, I feel like is an important distinction. Like it is fine for a book to be driven by horniness. Okay. But like, I always feel like an old lady, like when I'm like, there's 2 young characters who are just like very like up in their hormones. I cannot relate. And so like for it to be like high heat, but also like kind of like emotionally driven, I love it. Okay. She is a genius. And earlier in the pandemic, I read Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed like 17 times. Okay. Like 17 times between March and May. And then I stopped counting. Like it wasn't, we weren't counting anymore. Now it's just like, it's my emotional support book,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I read it based on your tweets about it. And then I convinced at least 5 people in Seasonally Booked Up to read it, including Dana, because I would not stop talking about it. It's like God tier enemies to lovers.
It really is.
So phenomenal.
It is. It is like a perfect book. Like often like imagine sitting down and like the second book you write is like literally a perfect object. Like that's just like, and it's like it manages to be enemies to lovers without being terrifically angsty. Okay. And like part of that's because only one of the characters thinks it's enemies to lovers. The other one has like some emotional maturity. But but they're both just poor dumb babies, and like it is so wonderful to watch them blossom.
So
and so I have done that a gazillion times.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, at least 5 myself. So that's great.
So is there a trope that you'd like to write but has been difficult to grasp?
I don't know that I ever gravitate towards a trope. It's always, to me, the characters in the story. And then later on, it's like, oh, that's what I'm writing. So it's never really been about the trope, more about those characters and what they are yapping about in my head, and where they go. Though I do have to say that I always wanted to write the pirate book. I mean, like a full on, and I did like do that a couple times because I just really like a pirate book. And yeah, it's more about the characters to me. It always has been. They step onto the page and they tell me their story, and then we go from there. And you just have to go for the ride.
Oh man, I want a pirate book. Like I don't want to write it, okay? But like
I love pirate books. I love pirates.
I love read like okay. So like Black Sails, yes. Okay. So I keep waiting for like the Black Sails with the serial numbers filed off to like appear in romance, and it hasn't happened yet. So I'm putting that out into the universe to like manifest. Okay. And I will not be the one to rate it because I don't understand how boats work and I can't do that amount of research. Sorry. Also, like I need to have situations for my characters to be really, really clean, and that's just not going to happen on a boat. But my trope that I cannot find my way to writing is enemies to lovers. I tried it for the book that I have coming out in June. It was a laughable failure, and so I rewrote it. So it's just like a coffee shop romance, which is probably like the polar opposite of enemies to lovers. But I have a hard time with like strife, So, but I don't think I'll ever actually write an enemies to lovers. I think I like learned my lesson, and now I won't. Now I won't do it.
Oh, I'd like to someday write a much older heroine, like a May-December romance with the genders flipped. And I think some authors have done it really, really well, and I would like to take that on someday. I think it would be fun.
Before we move to the next question, I might have a pirate rec for you, Kat. So one of our group members sent this to me the other day because she was like, this sounds like your kind of book. It's a queer male romance called Kidnapped by the Pirate by Kiera Andrews.
Yes. I have this on my radar too. So I'm glad I'm putting it on literally on.
Sounds amazing. For everyone listening, it's described as a May-December romance featuring a tough alpha pirate too afraid to love, a plucky virgin captive half his age, enemies to lovers, like all of the best things in a book.
A plucky virgin captive half his age. Click. So I one click that. The second, Sarah in our group sent that to me, so had to share since you're in the market.
They use the word plucky.
Yeah, it's like summary.
Love it.
Direct, quote unquote. Like,
okay, now I have it. It is on my phone. Okay.
There you go.
Love it.
All right, report back.
So we're at the hour mark. You want to leave into our last question, Kelly?
Yeah, so we would love to hear what you are working on next or what you have coming out next. But also for a lot of readers in our group, your books were their first books that they read by you. So where would you recommend they go next?
Well, I'll start. I have been, I took a pause writing romance a few years ago, and I have been working on a big historical fiction, and it's nearly done. Like it will be done in May, and come hell or high water, or pandemic, and it's about friendship. I wanted to write about a book about 3 very different women finding friendship and kind of finding their path into life, forgiveness, and the whole, all that great emotional stuff that we find with our friends. And so it's set in 1907 in a small town in Wyoming. And it's just been a joy to write. And it's a lot that's in my romance novels, like the humor and the friendship, but it's also just like real small town and all the little things that go on, and the social, and all the things that make my romances fun. I kind of have piled into this, yet it's more focused on friendship between these 3 women. Once that is finished, I would kind of like to go back and write, maybe start back and look at my backlist and say, okay, which book should I finish? Which book is not finished and needs to be done. So that will probably be what I'm starting into the summer.
Very exciting.
I am. I'm really excited to finish this thing. It's long. It's over 600 pages right now.
Wow.
My agent is like, you're gonna have to cut a little, but I don't know. It's really like 3 novellas. So I mean, but we shall see. And it's set at Christmas time, which has really been fun. So I have spent the last 3.5 years listening to Christmas music 24/7. My husband's like, "What are you playing? Oh, Little Town of Bethlehem again?" Because it gets me in the mood. So, but I'm excited about it, and it's been a lot of fun to write. And it's been a challenge because it's a stranded story, which I'd never written. It's got a little bit of magical realism, which I love, and so it's just been a real challenge and a real level your writing up thing. And so that's great. And then I want to bring all those mad skills back and write some more romance, because it's so much fun. It's so delightful. And if I was going to recommend one of my books, if you really liked His Mistress, My Morning, of course, follow it up with Tempted by the Night. But if you're going to go in and start the series, I would go read something about Emmeline, because that is got the same sort of vein, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a con artist book, and Emmeline is a con artist, and she just really pulls a fast one on the hero, and he finds himself trapped in this con of hers, and so it's a lot of fun. So I think you'll like that, and then it'll start you down a road that you'll have 7-8 more books to read.
Perfect.
Just trying to be helpful.
What about you, Kat? What are you working on next?
I am working on revisions. I have 2 different books that both need revisions at the same time, and so that's really boring. That's really boring. Let's not talk about that. I don't even think about it. So after I finish that, I'm reading some more 20th century American sat romances, novellas. I put out a novella last year in an anthology that takes place in 1960 in New England at a boarding school, with a teacher and one of the parents. And I really enjoyed writing something that was set more in the more recent past, and that was set in America. Yes, that's the anthology, which is no longer available. And also the novella isn't available yet because I haven't been able to format it properly, because I should not be trusted with any ones. So I'm going to probably have to hire somebody to format it because I'm pitiful. But I just finished, the second one in that series will come out in the fall. And I want to write a couple more in that series, either shorter novels or novellas, because that's also a really fun length, because you don't need much content, and you really can spend a lot of time just dumping emotion into it.
Can I ask if Pat and Harry we gonna see? Okay.
Yeah, they're the book
I was
that I'm
hoping.
next. Yeah, Pat and Harry. And But the one that's coming out in the fall is two characters that you don't know. So, but yeah, I basically at the beginning of the pandemic, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna write a road trip book involving two young people,
Amazing.
And so that's instead of writing what I was supposed to do, and so that's what I did. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to writing all that after I finish all of my editing. It's sad, but okay. We'll do it. We'll get through it.
And you have a book coming out soon.
I do. I have a book coming out in June, and it is called The Queer Principles of Kit Webb, and it is a 1750s coffee shop romance, but also a getting revenge against your evil father romance, and a highwayman romance. And it was a tremendous amount of fun to write, and I'm really excited about it. And its follow-up is one of the books that I'm going to need to be revising pretty soon. So
very exciting.
Wait, 1750s coffee shop romance.
Well, coffee house.
Real Starbucks. Come on, Lenora.
It sounds really interesting.
Also, you know how like a lot of coffee houses were basically dens of thieves, okay? And so you have, so I was like, this is what a business opportunity, right? Like for a highwayman who maybe has a little bit of capital that he wants to invest, he can go and buy a coffee house, have something to fall back on, right? And that's exactly what happens. He gets injured, and so now he's the proprietor of a coffee house. He's bored shitless, okay? And all he wants to do is go steal things from rich people. And so his happily ever after involves a return to stealing things from rich people. So
as one does.
Yeah.
It sounds freaking amazing. And I love the way you said it, like it was like we should all just know what that is, coffee shop romance. I'm like, okay. So
I'm gonna make it catch on.
Yes, you're new genre, and I'm here for it.
Well, it's like a fanfic, like the coffee shop AU is like a fanfic, right? Okay. But I was like, why don't I it's like that is the opposite of like the enemies to lovers that I couldn't manage to write for these people. And so like instead it's just a lot of warm beverages and cozy fires and possibly the assassination of your dad, but like cozy,
But cozy.
Low angst.
But I love that the barista owner used to be a highwayman, so got all this intrigue and sin and devilry in his past.
Yes, and his future.
Yes. Oh my god, I love it. I love it. Well, yeah, so I'm in the revisions boat with you, Kat. I'm revising the second in the Wallflowers versus Rogues. It is has been newly titled. It was called Seduction is a Scoundrel, but then the powers that be wanted there to be a duke in the title, so it is now called The Devil's Own Duke.
Oh.
And I'm revising it right now, trying to stuff more conflict in there. And I really had a lot of fun writing this book because, like I said, she's a vintner and she's all about developing. What happened to Lady Beatrice? Not Beatrice, Henrietta, sorry. So these books are inspired by fairy tales. The first one was Beauty and the Beast, and this one is Cinderella. So I don't know if readers are going to pick up on this, but her name is Lady Henrietta Prince. So she's Prince Henry, and he is Ash Ellis. Like Cinderella, I don't know. I thought it worked, but he's a gambler. He's a rogue. He's a scoundrel. He owns a gaming house. But he has made a claim to be the distant heir to her father's dukedom because it's kind of like a Downton Abbey scenario. They've lost their heirs. They've lost both their heirs. They have no heir to the dukedom. So this guy, he's like, hey, I'm the long lost heir to this dukedom. And then the dad's like, Anne, you got to marry my daughter. So I feel like there is built-in conflict there. It's a forced marriage. It is a forced marriage. So I always love that trope. I love a marriage of convenience. And it's not just a marriage of convenience. It's forced. It's a forced marriage. So I'm hoping to really dig down into that conflict even more. And then there's the is he or is he really the heir? There's that question as well. And then that comes out September 28th. It is my reverse trope Cinderella book and forced marriage.
Beautiful. All right. Well, that's so much for all of us to look forward to. So that's really exciting. All right. I think that's all the time we have for today. So to everyone in the comments and the audience who joined us, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. If you're watching this and you aren't familiar with Seasonally Booked Up, the book club that we run, the link to the Discord is down in the description. We're going to be starting a new season on March 29th called Spring of Spies. We have some really incredible books lined up. We have Beverly Jenkins and Alyssa Cole, Meredith Duran, Sherry Thomas, like amazing titles. So definitely come and read and chat with us because we would love to do that with all of you.
And again, the biggest thank you to Cat, Lenora, and Elizabeth for spending their Friday with us and giving us all these amazing books to read this whole season. And we've loved spending our winter with all of your characters. Thank you again, everyone.
Like Lenora said,
Thank you.
thank
This was so
you.
fun.
All your lovely pictures and all your great comments. It meant a lot.
I love it. All right. If our three authors could hang tight with Dana and I think otherwise we're going to end the stream. And have a wonderful night, everyone. Go read some romance.
Night.